An unexpected stillness cloaked the city of St. Aurelia in the hush before dawn. The streets lay quiet under the glow of ornate lampposts, casting elongated shadows along sidewalks and across empty roads. Even the rowdiest night owls had taken refuge in their apartments, leaving behind only scattered debris and flickering neon signs. In the center of this slumbering metropolis soared the imposing City Hall tower, topped by a wrought-iron angel statuette overlooking its domain. High atop that tower, in a place no mortal eye could see, the guardian angel Kale perched on the edge, silent wings folded against the wind. Kale observed the city he was bound to protect with vigilant devotion. St. Aurelia was no ordinary place. Arcane wards were etched into the foundations of certain downtown buildings, while hidden enclaves of mages and supernatural creatures conducted business in dark corners. Despite the city's artistic flair and political ambition, the swirl of intrigue that lurked beneath its surface grew more volatile each day. Kale could sense it. As a guardian angel, his mission was to watch over those with essential roles, to ensure that destiny did not unravel through the deeds of malicious sorcery or mortal negligence. His charge was Mayor Harriet Lee, a steadfast woman known for her unwavering passion to improve her city. She had won her position through a campaign of inclusivity and modernization. Combating corruption, forging alliances, listening to the demands of the people, her popularity soared. But so did her enemies. Kael had watched her from a distance for months, making sure no ill fate befell her. Occasionally, in her peripheral vision, Harriet felt a prickle of warmth or a stirring in the air that quickened her pulse. Unaware that a benevolent presence kept silent guard, a gust of wind rustled Kale's golden-feathered wings, drawing his attention to a figure slipping through the darkness below. Clad in black robes, the stranger moved with a deliberate, almost ritualistic gait along an alley just 2 blocks from City Hall. Kale's celestial senses whispered danger. He recognized an aura tainted by dark magic drifting in thin, twisting threads around the figure's form. This was no ordinary criminal, for the stench of malevolent sorcery was unmistakable. Kale slid off the tower's ledge, wings opening into a silent glide, following the figure through the warren of streets. The robed stranger abruptly stepped behind a stone gargoyle statue perched above a narrow theater entrance. With a whispered incantation, the figure glanced about to ensure no mortal eyes witnessed the act, but Kale, cloaked in an invisible veil, watched as a flickering circle of symbols etched themselves into the ground. The figure chanted words that resonated with an unholy cadence, causing a surge of swirling midnight energy to spark and dance within the circle. Kael's throat constricted. This was potent necromancy, drawn from an ancient wellspring. These spells could slay instantly, corrode souls, or wreak havoc that would ripple across the city. Gil remained watchful, trying to glean the sorcerer's intent. If the assassin intended to kill Harriet on a public stage, it would likely be an explosive confrontation. If the plan was to manipulate her from a dark corner of city politics, the approach might be equally insidious. The robed figure concluded the incantation and sealed the circle with black wax, leaving the hurried scrawl of arcane runes behind. In a swirl of robes, the stranger melted back into the labyrinth of alleys, propelled by an air of lethal confidence. Alarmed, Kale pressed a glowing hand to the circle. With a soft exhale of divine power, he rendered the runes inert. The glimmers of dark energy fizzled out into inert ash, and the circle's threat vanished. Yet such an act felt like placing a bandage on a gaping wound. The attempted spell told Kale that the culprit, or perhaps several, were orchestrating a more elaborate plan. Kale ascended with great haste, stirring scattered rubbish from the alley as he returned to the rooftops. If the city's mayor was indeed the target, Harriet's life depended on him unraveling the plot at once. Morning arrived in a flurry of activity at City Hall. Political journalists jostled for space in the marble lobby, while local union leaders impatiently waited for appointments. At the center of this hustle glided Harriet Lee, moving from one handshake to another. Her short hair framed sharp brown eyes, brimming with intelligence and determination. She embraced her devoted staff with encouragement, shared jokes with a pair of police officers, and steeled herself before boarding the elevator to her office. Cale stood nearby, veiled from mortal sight, drawn to her warmth and to a sense that she possessed a vital role in the city's destiny. In Harriet, Cale saw a heart unscathed by cynicism and greed, but risk hovered over her like an invisible blade. As Harriet's press secretary, a man named Colin, approached, Cale sensed the staffer's mild impatience, followed by concern. Harriet's schedule was jam-packed. An afternoon press conference, multiple constituent meetings, and a fundraiser dinner across town. All opportunities for an assassin to strike if they had the cunning and the right spells at hand. While Harriet began her day in her office, Cale drifted through the corridors, seeking arcane traces. Near the record room stood a junior clerk rifling through cabinets, eyes darting left and right. A faint swirl of black magic pulsed from within the clerk's jacket pocket. Cale approached with caution. The clerk was rummaging anxiously, and when a security guard walked by, he froze, pressing himself against a row of dusty binders. The guard passed without noticing, preoccupied with something else. The clerk then hurriedly continued his search. Realizing this might be a planted agent, Cale considered intervening, but the presence of so many people complicated matters. For a moment he wondered if confronting this clerk now would risk revealing his nature as a guardian angel. He decided to watch from the astral vantage, concealed among the swirling motes of dust in the high-ceiling lights. The clerk finally extracted a file folder labeled Urban Renewal, West Side District. As the young man flipped through the pages, Cale sensed the surge of black magic emanating from that folder. Before the clerk could do anything else, Harriet's paternal, booming aide Gregory stepped in. "What are you doing here, Jeremy?" Gregory asked, frowning. "You're not assigned to the West Side District data." A flicker of panic crossed the younger man's face, but he forced a laugh. "Oh, sorry. Mixed up the archives. Chief Administrator sent me. Must have read the location number incorrectly." Gregory narrowed his eyes. "You should be more careful." With a brusque nod, he ushered the clerk out. Jeremy left the room, the file folder still in hand. Cale knew it was no error. Harriet's team had curated that folder meticulously for policy announcements. If tampered with, the data might be altered cleverly to sabotage Harriet's initiatives. On a deeper level, the black magic's pulse could indicate something sinister embedded within the documents themselves. A hex or cursed mention. If Harriet unknowingly reviewed those pages, she could fall prey to mental manipulation or even a fatal enchantment. Cale moved swiftly. He touched down behind Jeremy, slipping through the corridor without mortal detection. With a focused gesture, Cale poured the faintest shimmer of heavenly light into the folder. The vile residue of dark magic dissolved in a hiss of steam. Jeremy, feeling the burn along his fingertips, recoiled, dropping the folder with a yelp. The unsuspecting clerk stared, trying to reconcile the singed hole in the corner of the manila file with a plausible explanation for the scorching. Shaking, Jeremy snatched the file and hurried off, perhaps deciding that sabotage by magical means was best left to someone else. As the day wore on, Harriet's schedule carried her from one pressing matter to the next, culminating in the press conference outside City Hall. She stood at a podium, flanked by the city's emblem and swirling banners in bright autumn hues. Cameras flashed. A dozen microphones captured her every word as she presented a new initiative against corruption, detailing how city funds would be more transparently allocated to revitalize neglected neighborhoods. Cale hovered in the margins, a silent sentinel, scanning the crowd for harmful intent. Mid-speech, Harriet paused for a sip of water. Cale's senses flared. He detected a wave of dark energy among the reporters. Squinting, he located the source. A man in a neat black suit, nondescript, blending in with the cluster of journalists. Ringed by an invisible haze of shadow, the man stared at Harriet with cold precision. Then, With a subtle gesture, he slid something from his jacket pocket, a small black orb etched with ancient sigils. Kael recognized it, a scrying orb used for infiltration spells, typically to tune into a target's vulnerabilities or to sow illusion. The man, focusing intently on Harriet, whispered an incantation that set a swirl of dark mist churning around the orb. Kael lunged inward. Invisible to human sight, he passed right through the throng. He raised a glowing hand between Harriet and the black-suited man. A shimmering barrier of angelic light flared, momentarily disorienting the caster. The cameras recorded a strange flicker in the air like sunlight glinting off polished metal. Harriet felt it too, a surge of pressure that left her momentarily breathless. She recovered quickly, cleared her throat, and resumed her speech. The onlookers attributed the disturbance to a stray reflection from the stage lighting. The man in black scowled, pressing the orb back into his pocket. Then he retreated into the crowd, likely intending to regroup. Kael followed, weaving between camera operators and curious members of the public. The man slipped through a service entrance around the side of City Hall. Once you stepped beyond that door, you were in a cramped corridor leading to a warren of storerooms, boiler rooms, and maintenance closets. Kael cut him off at the end of the hallway. At first, the assassin seemed not to notice Kael's presence. But his next incantation, begun in hushed tones, charged the air with smoky black tendrils. Suddenly, a flash of recognition rippled through the man's face, eyes widening as they met Kael's shimmering form. Though angels were invisible to standard mortal perception, some mages, especially those delving in the darkest arts, possessed the dreadful ability to peer beyond the mundane. Their eyes burned with the knowledge that not all guardians were mere myths. "Angel," hissed the assassin, lips curling into a grin. "So the rumors are true. They sent you after me." Kael did not speak, yet luminescent power flickered around his figure. The assassin whipped out the black orb again, conjuring swirling illusions that sought to bind Kael's wings. Smoke shaped into serpentine coils that snapped and constricted around him. Sinister magic crackled through the corridor, sizzling overhead. The plaster walls groaned under the strain of incompatible energies. With a singularly focused resolve, Kael surged forward, arms outstretched, and unleashed a blade of brilliant light. The illusions shrieked and dissipated. In a final flash, the assassin flicked his wrist, letting out a hollow cackle as an oily wave of darkness flooded the corridor. Kael felt the world tilt. The corridor twisted, shapes bending like molten glass, and then everything went black. Kael awakened in a deserted underground area, uncertain how much time had passed. A quick scan of the environment revealed massive steel pipes running overhead, and the faint drip of water echoed in distant corners. Dim, battered lamps shed half-hearted light onto the scene. He deduced that the assassin had used a teleportation spell to shift them both to an old subterranean chamber beneath the city. Gaunt columns of concrete supported the structure, and graffiti murals told stories of long-neglected corners of Centaurelia, and in the center of it all stood the assassin, orb in hand, glaring in malevolent triumph. "You can't thwart me forever," he declared, voice echoing. "The mayor's days are numbered." He turned his free hand upwards, chanting an incantation that conjured a shimmering black ripple through the stale air. "The city will fall under the rule of a different power, a power you cannot stand against. Your wings will be clipped by nightfall." Kael rose to his feet, ignoring the dull ache from the forced teleportation. He advanced, summoning the soft glow of divine energy around him. "Your dark illusions cannot hold back heaven's light," Kael spoke, voice resonating in a gentle but unyielding tone audible only to those attuned to the supernatural. "You have no claim over Harriet or Cinderelia." Dark shapes erupted from the assassin's orb claws of living shadow that lunged to strike. Kael parried with luminous arcs. Sparks of black and gold set the subterranean air alight with violent flickers. Each blow delivered from the shadows tugged at Cale's spirit, attempting to poison him with doubt or drain his essence, but he remained resolute. With every strike, Cale reaffirmed his purpose. Harriet must live, so the destiny of this city could unfold for the better. In a powerful clash, Cale's blazing sword of light sliced through the orb. A deafening crack reverberated as the dark artifact splintered. Malevolent energy surged, forcing Cale to brace himself and shield his face. The assassin tumbled backward, shrieking as arcs of destructive magic hammered his body and roiled into the gloom. When the clamoring finally settled, the orb lay in shattered fragments, and the assassin slumped to the ground, trembling, but not quite defeated. Still reeling, he spat. "You think the dark arts end with me?" He managed a bitter laugh. "I'm but one blade in a greater arsenal. Others lurk in the city's shadows. They will finish what I began." Cale approached, gazing at the broken orb and the small cloud of black residue hovering over it. The robed man's malevolence had cost him dearly. Burning runes scorched into his forearms. With a slight tremble, he tried to conjure more magic, but the orb was gone, his powers critically crippled. Cale touched 2 fingers to the gaping cut in the city's spiritual dimension, stitching it closed with a surge of divine will. The swirling darkness dissipated, leaving only stale subterranean air behind. Before Cale could consider what to do with the assassin, the man's eyes rolled back. A final shudder passed through him, as if a remote entity reeled him away like a discarded puppet. A shadowy brand glowed on the man's wrist, indicating magical extraction. In a flare of black luminescence, the assassin's body dissolved into nothingness. The final echo of his voice lingered. "The mayor will not escape our vengeance. Our master sees all." Cale stood motionless in the half-lit chamber, essence pulsing with a deep urgency. Whoever commanded this assassin was well versed in conjuration and necromancy, a lethal combination. A single, solitary victory here would not vanquish the threat. If Harriet was to be safe, Cale had to track the deeper conspiracy. But first, he must return to City Hall. Re-emerging from the basement and ascending into the back corridors of City Hall, Cale sensed Harriet's presence behind her office door. She was in a heated discussion with a local council member. Cale drifted through the wall, just in time to witness Harriet leaning across her desk, voice low so as not to carry beyond the 4 walls. The council member, an older woman named Dixby, looked uneasy. "Our city has a long history of underground dealings," Harriet said firmly, pointing to a map pinned to a corkboard. "I won't stand by while these criminals infiltrate our governance with bribes or threats. Councilwoman, I need your support for stronger law enforcement oversight. These rumors of occult involvement make it even more pressing." The older woman shifted in her seat, eyebrows pinched together. "I know that hidden forces exist, Harriet, but be careful. Aligning with any group rumored to have supernatural ties could be political suicide." Harriet sighed. "I don't want an alliance. I just need to block them from corrupting what we've built." Dixby glanced away, reluctance etched on her face. "I'll consider it. But you're risking a lot to fight an invisible threat, one the public might dismiss as paranoia." After the council member left, Harriet sank back into her desk chair, worry swirling in her eyes. Without fanfare, Cale radiated a soft, calming presence. Harriet inhaled deeply and then carried on to check her phone for messages. Cale recognized her relentless dedication, yet the assassin's words echoed. Harriet was not merely threatened by local criminals, but by an orchestrated magical conspiracy. Cale decided that Harriet needed immediate guidance, or at least a measure of protection she could sense. But revealing his angelic nature to her was a delicate matter. Without trust, a mortal might reject the intangible presence as either a delusion or a sign of madness. Nonetheless, as evening approached, Harriet prepared to depart for the fundraiser dinner at Meriden Hotel across the city's downtown district. Cole slipped into the passenger seat of her official car, unseen. Security detail accompanied her in a following vehicle. In the dusk, city lights flickered on with a stuttering glow, painting the asphalt with swirling neon. Cole felt uneasy. The scoreboard of politics dictated Harriet show up to this event, greet donors, and reassure stakeholders. But the darkness brewing in St. Aurelia hung like a thundercloud. He suspected the conjurer could strike at any moment. At the Meriden Hotel, Harriet stepped into a grand ballroom filled with glittering chandeliers, polished floors, and waiters bearing silver trays of appetizers. Lobbyists, philanthropists, and corporate figures meandered about in formal attire, picking up souvenirs and promotional brochures. Harriet worked the room, shaking hands, receiving polite congratulations, deflecting veiled criticisms with charm. Cale drifted above the crowd, monitoring the swirl of energies. This time, he detected not a single figure but multiple faint tendrils of necromantic presence, like threads in a spider's web. Suddenly, near the stage, the lights flickered. A hush fell over the crowd. The band's soft jazz cut off mid-song, replaced by an unsettling silence. Harriet froze in place, scanning her surroundings. A man in a sleek, dark suit stood at the microphone, unplanned and unintroduced. Cale saw the glimmer of a silver ring on his finger, etched with swirling runes. The man tapped the microphone once, sending feedback screeches through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice dripping with a cold confidence, "our dear mayor has neglected a significant part of this city for too long." He locked eyes with Harriet. "Tonight we speak for those overshadowed by her illusions of progress." A ring of blackish sparks flickered around the stage, forming a partial barrier. Harriet's security detail, startled, rushed forward, but found themselves blocked by an unseen force. Guests began screaming, backing away, some dropping their champagne glasses in a cascade of muffled crashes. Cale soared above them, but it only took a moment for him to realize that this figure was a conduit for a more powerful adversary. Magic rippled outward from the ring, polluting the air with swirling gloom. Harriet, heart thundering, took a brave step forward. "Who are you? Show yourself and leave these people out of it." The man smirked. "I am merely a vessel. But if you wish to address my master—" He didn't finish. Cale descended in a bolt of golden luminescence, placing himself between Harriet and the newly possessed host. The crowd gaped, some gasping at the angelic silhouette that flickered irregularly into view. "Your cruelty ends here," Cale stated, voice echoing across the room. Steam rose in silvery whirls where his aura crackled against the conjured barrier. The possessed man sneered. "So the Guardian truly protects her, filthy insect of light." He twisted the silver ring, chanting a guttural phrase that transformed it into a writhing black serpent coiled around his finger. A torrent of dark magic erupted, twisting like a vortex, launching shards of vacuum force at Cale. Cale blocked each attack with arcs of divine brilliance that sizzled upon impact. The guests stumbled back, pressing themselves against the far walls, uncertain whether to flee or remain mesmerized by the supernatural spectacle. Harriet watched, wide-eyed yet resolute, her entire existence rocked by revelations. No longer could she dismiss tales of magic and unseen guardian. A swirl of darkness coalesced around the possessed man as he floated inches off the ground, glaring at Cale with unnatural might. "We'll kill her," he hissed. "Your interference means nothing." "No," Cale answered, leveling a final burst of radiant force. The pure energy engendered a roar like 100 trumpets. Light surged, fracturing the dark vortex and splintering the vile serpent ring. The magical barrier ringed with a deafening crack before dissolving into glittering mote. The possessed man fell onto the stage, ring shattered. Black tendrils lifted from his body, sputtering before vanishing into the rafters like scorched ash. Freed from possession, he groaned, eyes returning to mortal confusion. Harriet's security detail charged in, guns raised, but none of them fired. Confusion reigned as they witnessed a creature of luminescence standing protectively at Harriet's elbow. Cale, sensing that the immediate threat was vanquished, turned to Harriet. Their eyes met hers, brimming with astonishment, fear, and a flicker of gratitude. Kale's wings gently retracted, the blazing halo softening. It was a delicate moment. Revealing himself so fully broke numerous unspoken rules about guardian angels and mortal awareness. But the city's crisis had demanded the risk. Harriet swallowed, trying to steady her trembling voice. You're an angel, aren't you? She glanced at the battered stage, the swirling remnants of malevolent magic still drifting like dust motes in the overhead lights. All these incidents, the sabotage, the attempts on my life. It's real. Kale inclined his head in a silent nod. Words would matter less than actions now. Harriet's composure, though shaken, rallied with remarkable resilience. She gestured for her security detail to lower their weapons. Stand down. He's helping me. She drew in a breath, gaze flickering across the disoriented party guests. We need to secure the area and ensure the injured receive help. Her staff jumped into action. Medics rushed in to attend the possessed man, who was now unconscious, while other employees ushered the stunned crowd to safer areas. Harriet turned back to Kale. Though exhausted from the confrontation, the glow of conviction shone on her features. How many more of them are out there? Kale lifted his gaze to the vaulted ceiling, sensing the swirling threads of a conspiracy that danced outside the hotel's walls. Even though the immediate threat had been neutralized, the entire city crackled with arcane tension. The assassin from before had been just one operative. This new host was controlled by the same or a parallel power. Harriet's question hung in the air like a challenge. The path forward would be dangerous, but a rare synergy had formed between the mayor, who believed in progress, and the angel, who believed in safeguarding her destiny. Harriet looked around at the shaken donors and staff. Her eyes rested on Kale once more, a silent question lingering. How do we prepare for battles we cannot see? Kale offered a gentle smile, stepping closer so only she could truly feel the warmth of his presence. His luminous wings stretched, then folded. His answer lay in the calm reassurance that all was not lost. Where there is dark magic, there is also light. We'll drive it out, together. Her stance grew surer, and her voice steadied. Then that is exactly what we shall do. She turned to face the crowd, ignoring the swirling camera flashes, capturing the angelic figure at her side. While her city, this place she called home, found itself on the precipice of arcane conflict, Harriet lay resolved to stand firm. And Kale, the guardian angel bound to protect her, silently pledged to stand with her against the shadows, no matter how many dark spellcasters lurked in the city's underbelly. Though the spectacle of supernatural forces would send shockwaves through the next day's news cycle, Harriet and Kale understood that there was no turning back to complacency. This was merely the opening salvo in a larger campaign, a battle for the very soul of Santaralia. But Harriet would not face it alone, and with Kale's divine shield circling around her, the shadows that threatened her life would learn that no darkness could ultimately conquer a heart kindled by courage and defended by an angel's fading but eternal light.